Good morning, Matt.
Good morning.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic.
So, still running the 5Ks, or has writing books become your new workout?
Writing books has become my new workout, but I am still working out on doing treadmill running and stuff like that. But I missed the 5Ks actually.
When was the last time you did one or you completed one?
Yeah, the last one I did had to be July of 23 because it was
Okay.
shortly after that I
hmm
was diagnosed with prostate
hmm
cancer. So yeah,
Was it hot in July there or?
it's the hottest month.
All
July
right.
and August are we call the dog days of summer.
All right. Is it dry or humid?
Humid. It's very
Oh,
humid.
wow. Yeah. I can't do that. Sorry.
Yeah,
I
it's brutal.
Yeah, it's brutal. Yeah. You mentioned something that's really stayed with me, the idea that God doesn't waste pain. It's bold and it fits your journey, I must say.
It does. It does. And I'm not one who holds that God causes pain or is the author of illness or sickness or pain or anything like that. But I do believe with all of my heart that he uses it. In fact, um, uh, I believe that he turns all things for our good,
Right.
and I just believe that. And one of the things that stands out to me a lot and something I have been thinking about a lot, especially recently, is there's a story in the Old Testament about Joseph. We've all
hmm
Joseph in the coat of many
hmm
colors. We've all heard that probably somewhere along the line. And at the end of his journey, he goes through his brothers betray him, and he gets in Egypt, and he's sold as a slave in Egypt, and he goes through that. Then he ends up in the dungeon, and he goes through that. Then he ends up interpreting Pharaoh's dream, and he comes out and
And he
now is in
became the
charge of.
Pharaoh's right hand and
That's right.
trusty.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
became the prime
Yeah.
minister of Egypt, and he saved the
He did.
nation from
From
famine.
famine. Yeah.
And yeah, and at the end of that story, his brothers who betrayed him,
hmm
many scholars believe, 20 years or more earlier,
hmm
have now come to him, and he goes through this whole game with them. He has a little fun himself. He goes through game with them and all this kind of thing. But at the end, and the whole culmination of that story is found in Genesis chapter 50.
hmm
He says, guys, you meant this for evil against me.
Right.
And then the words that absolutely grip my heart is what came next. And he says, but God meant this for good. And I have a real existential dilemma there, because you've got two meanings. You've got you being, evil and wicked and out to get me, had evil intentions. You meant this for my harm. And then he said, but God meant this, and he uses the same word, meant this for my good.
Mhm.
And you have two opposing wills there. The intention for evil and the intention for good are both present. And that's, I think, where what we can learn from Joseph in that, and something that I have tried very hard um, to adopt the mindset of is, listen, this is happening to me and I don't know why. I'm not going to try to answer the why question. I know that's natural human tendency to want to do that, but I think we get lost. Or at least for me, I get lost in the why. It's like I don't know that there's value in asking the why, but I have to know, or I have to believe that God is intending this for my good in some way, somehow. He is working in me something that I don't see that I need, or that I recognize that I need. And I'm not saying he is the author of pain or he is the author of suffering,
Mhm.
but I do know this. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul says, um, he turns all things for our good to those that love him and are called according to his purpose. And what I believe that means is, for those people who are trying to live a righteous and upstanding life as best as they know how and as best as they can, that God will take whatever suffering, whatever pain, whatever grief, whatever sorrow,
Mhm.
and turn it into something that ends up making them stronger, more resilient, better in some way. And,
Amen.
one final thought on that is Paul himself actually says in a couple different places in the New Testament, in his epistles, he says, I have this thorn in my flesh that I've borne for so long. And he goes, I prayed to God 3 different times to take this away from me. And finally, the Lord responded to him after making him wait a while, by the way, he says, stop. I'm paraphrasing. I'm paraphrasing, but he says, essentially, stop whining about this. I have my grace is sufficient for you. In other words, this is something you can endure. And secondly, I had to keep it there to keep you humble. Otherwise, you might think that you're better than you are. Yeah. So God, again, uses these things. I don't believe God inflicted Paul with whatever that thorn was, but I do believe he leveraged it for Paul's benefit ultimately. Yeah. And that's my overarching philosophy of how that works. And of course, there's a lot of nuance in that.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Matt. I believe it too strongly, and I always wrestle with the why. It does not stop. It just doesn't stop. We all wrestle with that question. We're going to talk about this. We're going to elaborate a lot soon, but we are here on earth. We've been tested. It's a test. It's a non-stop test. And the best example is Abraham.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that. I believe that. Let's talk about how pain can shape purpose and why your story, Matt, matters right now. This episode going to go deep. I'm quite sure about that. From the radiation room to the real leadership. Let's jump in. The following is a conversation with Dr. Matt Kutz, a global leadership expert, author, and prostate cancer survivor. This is Pre-Zero Sports Talk podcast, and I'm your host, Sid Ben Salah. Today, we explore resilience, leadership, and purpose in the face of adversity to share authentic stories and insights that truly matter. To support our show, please check the episode description. Matt, welcome to the show. It's a really privilege to have you here.
I love it. Thank you very much for having me.
You've led leadership programs across the world, worked in a high-performance athletic, and built a movement while fighting cancer. Today, I want to explore that arc, how pain, purpose, and perspective can transform the way we show up as men, leaders, and people. For our listeners who are athletes, coaches, leaders, and community builders, you bring, Matt, something unique. I'm quite sure about that, and we're going to talk about it. To start, take us back, Matt, to the moment you first heard your diagnosis. What was the scene? What was going through your mind, and how did you make sense of it?
Yeah, so great question. I mean, the first thing that was going through my mind, to be honest with you, is how long am I going to live? Is this, you immediately go to the what if, the rumination of, oh my gosh, I have so many things left to do. I have so many things in my heart. I have so much love to give. And, at that point, my wife and I had our very first grandbaby, who is now 2 years old. Mm-hmm. And so I'm thinking about, oh my gosh, I wanted to be here for my granddaughter's wedding, and all these things. So what's immediately going through my mind is all the potential things that I might lose. And that was pretty traumatic. And of course, the same is true for my wife. She began to think, I know, because she told me, is how am I going to live alone? And that's what happened initially. Wow. I mean, those are all happen in a nanosecond. Yeah. All of those things just flood through because we're sitting in the doctor's office. I wasn't even sure why I was there because my diagnosis was a very unusual one in that I had no symptoms whatsoever. And I was actually very active and healthy. And I was, in fact, we only found out about it by accident. I would have still not known about it had I not crashed my bike training for a triathlon. I was
Okay.
training for a triathlon and crashed my bike, and that's a whole nother story. But I ended up breaking my thumb. I had a couple bruised ribs, a concussion, and I was following up. After I don't know, it was um, I want to say 3 months later,
Mhm.
I was experiencing chest pain, and so I called my doctor, and he's like, I explained what was going on, and I'm like, I'm a man of a certain age, so I'm always concerned about, or doctors are always concerned about, heart health and all those kinds of things. So I explained what happened. He goes, okay, yeah, it could be that, and we need to check it out because you brought it up, but it could just be residual pain from the ribs injury that you had.
Right.
And I'm like, oh yes, of course. I felt stupid actually, because I'm like, oh yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I was worried for nothing. I was like, oh, never mind, never mind. It's my ribs. You're right. I forgot about that kind of a thing. And he's like, well, that's fine, but since you mentioned it, we have an ethical obligation to check this out. So I did. So I went in and I was doing the EKG and the whole thing. The lead cords are on my chest and running on the treadmill, doing the thing, and they're checking my heart. And of course, it was fine, turned out
Mm.
perfect. And but as he's standing there with the test, he's got his folder open and my medical notes, and he notices that I never came in um, for my 50-year-old, well check,
Checkup.
so to
Yeah.
speak. Yeah, and that 50 years old for men, that means a colonoscopy and it means a prostate exam and it means, all the stuff that we avoid.
Sounds familiar. I've
Yeah.
done it.
And so he said, hey, you never came in. You're like 2 years overdue for
Oh.
this. And I'm like, all right, well, let's do it. I'm here, let's do it. So we did. And they did all the stuff and all the tests and the blood work and the scheduled the colonoscopy and all that kind of stuff. And I just went home knowing, relieved that, yeah, my heart is in great shape. Don't have to worry about it, and all that. And that's all I was really thinking about.
Right.
And I'm still, by the way, training for an upcoming triathlon. So I'm still active and I'm still doing the stuff. And about 2 days later, he called and was like, hey, or not him, but his nurse
Mhm.
called and said, hey, your prostate was a little, we got your blood work back and everything,
Mhm.
and some of the standard stuff. Hey, listen, it's cut down on the salt. Your blood pressure
Mhm.
was a little high,
Mhm.
that kind of a thing. And, but she said, but your prostate was pretty high, and we recommend that you see a urologist right away. And they gave me the name of the
Right.
referral and all the stuff. And I just said, okay, thank you very much, and put it on the wall and didn't think about it because I I didn't have any prostate symptoms. So I just thought, oh, it's just another weird anomaly, and I wasn't really concerned about it at all. And I actually let it go for 2 weeks. And finally, my wife was like, hey, this note on the refrigerator here, did you call this urologist yet? I'm like, no, I haven't called him yet, and I'm fine. I'm not worried about it. And any rate, she's well, we'll call him just to make me feel
Mhm.
better. So I did. I called and I didn't know what the numbers meant. My PSA was 52.4.
Right.
Okay, and if you know anything, a PSA, which is prostate specific antigen number, is anything above a 3 is alarming.
Right.
Okay, so I'm at 52, and I don't know what that means. I didn't. That meant nothing to me. So I called the nurse and scheduled the appointment. She goes, "Hey, this is a really busy urology office. It's going to be at least 3 months, maybe even 6, before we can get you in."
Wow.
And I'm like, you know what? That's fine. And I was like, that's fine. Cause I actually, in a couple of weeks, I'm leaving for Australia. I'm going to be there for 4 weeks and I've got some work to do and then I'll be back. So yeah, 6 months from now is perfect. Let's just schedule it for 6 months. So I did. I scheduled it for 6 months and had all the dates written down and we were good to go. And she's okay. Well, we'll see you on whatever date it was. And she goes, oh, wait, by the way, what was your PSA number? The doctor's going to want to know that. And I pull out the sheet and I said, it was 52.4. And she's like, oh, hold on one second.
Oi.
It puts me on hold and goes away. She's away for about 2 minutes or
Mhm.
so. And she comes back and she says, I just spoke to the doctor. Can you get here today? She's like, our last patient is at 3:30.
Mm.
And if you could get here at 3:30, he wants to see you,
Right
at the end
away.
of the day before he goes
Yeah.
home. Yeah, right away. So I said, yeah, sure. Now my wife was at work. Now
Mhm.
she had left for work. So I hung up the phone. And that moment was the terror, the first moment, because, I didn't know what all the numbers meant, but I knew enough to know, wait a second, he just moved me from 6 months out because
To
he's busy
today, right
to
now. Yeah.
immediately, you need to get here right now. So I
Yeah.
immediately knew something was not right.
Right.
So I called my wife and I said, hey, listen, you're gonna have to come home from work. If
Mhm.
you want to, if you want, asked her if she wanted to come with me. So the doctor actually wants to see me today.
Mhm.
She's like, what? Today? What? Why? What's wrong? I said, I have no idea, but he wants to see me right away. So the appointment's at 3:30 and which was a couple hours away yet. And she's like, okay, well, I'll leave here and meet you there at 3:30. So 3:30 comes, I go to the doctor's office, I wait in the parking lot, my wife shows up. So we walk in together and we sit down and we didn't have to wait much at all because the last patient was just leaving. And so he brings us into the room and he hadn't even, he briefly introduced himself, but he looked at me and he says, do you know why you're here right now, right? And I'm like, sir, I have no idea why I'm here right now. And he says, you have cancer. And I'm like, really? It's like, he goes, listen, I know we didn't do any tests or anything,
Mm.
but I've been doing this for 29 years. And he goes, I've seen one other time where a PSA was as
Was
high
that?
as
Yeah.
yours. Yeah, and I know that anything above whatever, he told me the number, but a certain threshold number, it's always cancer. He goes, I'm 99% sure that you have cancer. So the question is, how are we going to address this? Because that's a big number, and it could be more aggressive than we realize and all that. And that's the moment that I'm sitting there in the chair and that feeling of terror, that what am I going to be? Oh my God, the C word, cancer. It's that,
Mhm.
am I going to live? Is this treated? All the things that just spin around in your head. And so he reassures me. He's like, okay, listen, prostate cancer is very common. Do you have any family history of it? No. Do you have any symptoms? No. He goes through the list. Frequent urination at night. Nope. I still sleep through the night. I'm not getting up to pee. Pee stream.
Mhm.
How is that? Strong. So yeah, I didn't know what was strong or weak, but I was like, it's fine to me. I'm not concerned about it. It's not dribbles or anything like that. It's okay. And sexual function, all that. No, that's fine. And senses of urgency. No, none of that. And in fact, I told him I'm training for a race and I'm in good shape. I just had an EKG and I'm healthy and everything's good. And he's like, okay, well, okay, then that's all good news. That's all great news. It means it's probably just a little bit. And it's very treatable. 10 years ago, different story, but the new tech and all the
Yeah.
stuff and the breakthroughs we've made, he goes, you're going to have a good long life. I wouldn't worry about it. So I'm like, okay. So he goes through the options with me. Here's how can we treat it? He gives me a book and we go home and we read, my wife and I read the book and we go through the process. Okay, well, are we going to do the seeds, the radiation seeds? Are we going to have the removal? Are we going to watch it? There were a few other options. And we had decided, based on his advice, because one of the things he did do in the office after that was a little ultrasound, one of these diagnostic ultrasounds, similar to how they would use an ultrasound when they're taking a picture of a baby,
Mhm.
and that similar kind of a thing. And so he did a little ultrasound and he told me, he goes, listen, your prostate is the size of a baseball. He goes, it's three. Actually, he didn't say it that way. He said it's 66 cubic centimeters, which a normal prostate is about 20 cubic
Wow.
centimeters.
Wow.
And then he asked me, he goes, when you sit down, it should feel like you're sitting
Yeah.
on a baseball.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, Doc, I promise. If I felt that, believe me, I would tell you, but he's like, wow. And so anyway, so because of that, we decided to have it removed.
Yeah.
We did the radical
Mhm.
prostatectomy.
Mhm.
And so we did that and scheduled it, and he again rushed it right away. So he actually moved me into like the next week, canceled another patient, or well, not canceled, but moved another
Yeah.
patient to get me
Yeah.
in to do it. So we did it, and then I'm still thinking everything's going to be fine. The surgery is going to be simple. I'm still planning on going into
To
Australia
Australia.
in a
Yeah.
few weeks,
Yeah.
right? And so he takes it out, and we go through the recovery, and the surgery went great, got it all. They did the Da Vinci robot surgery and all that kind of stuff. And so we did all that, and everything was great. And I was feeling fine until about 2 days later. And I'm recovering, and he comes in, he goes, well, listen, here's the good news, is everything went great. We got it all out, and blah, blah, blah. And we were able to try to actually save even some of your nerves and stuff like that. So hopefully you won't have any sexual dysfunction issues, because that's a big side effect, and all that kind of stuff. And you'll be incontinent for a little while, but you should be able to recover from that. And so everything was good. He goes, the bad news, however, is we did the lab work, and we found that it was too close to what he called the margins. And it was really too close to the margin. So we suspected that it might have gotten out. So they ordered a PSMA PET scan, and that showed that it had metastasized, and there was already some prostate cancer on my pelvis and in my lymph nodes. So it had spread. And that's when the real terror, hit me. And there's a whole story behind that. I actually wrote about it in a memoir, a book I called Diagnosed. And it's you can get it on Amazon, but I tell the full details of the story there, and even how it happened, because you know how they give you these, he didn't tell me that right there in the hospital, because they've got to get the notes and it's got to be read. And I actually got the notification on my phone that my medical record had just been updated. And so, and this was like 11 o'clock at night. So the curiosity overtook me. I would never recommend this. It was a tragic mistake that I made. And I went to my medical record that's online in my chart, kind of a thing. And I looked at the updated record, and I'm trying to read the medical mumbo jumbo, but I know enough to be dangerous, my background in sports medicine and all that. So I'm not an oncologist by any stretch of the imagination, but I know enough to, like I said, to be dangerous. So I'm reading this thing, and I'm dumbstruck. I'm absolutely dumbstruck, because it seems to me that this report is saying that the cancer has spread to my pelvis and my lymph nodes. And I think that's what it says. I wasn't sure that's what it said, but then, so I'm thinking about that. Oh my God, it's spread. And now it's not just prostate cancer. Now this is a whole nother ball of wax. And my wife was sleeping right there, and I'm literally reading this in my bed on my phone. And my wife is already asleep, and I'm wrestling with, do I wake her up and tell her this? Do I not? What do I do? I opted not to. I didn't want to wreck both of our night's sleep. So she's sleeping next to me, and I bet you I got 10 minutes of sleep that night. Yeah. And I just going through every possible worst case scenario that a human can go through. Am I going to be around? How long am I going to be around? Am I going to miss my grandchildren? What will my sons do? Both my sons were and still are in doctoral programs in grad school. And I'm like, I absolutely, I'm already creating letters to them and conversations with them. It's like, listen, whatever happens to me, don't you dare drop out of school to take care of mom or me. And mom's going to be taken care of. Make sure you pursue your goals, accomplish your dreams. Don't sacrifice those for me. I'm going to be okay. Me and, I'm telling myself these stories. What am I going to tell my boys? And just scenario after scenario. And it was torture. I mean, I literally tossed and turned all night. And then when my wife woke up the next morning, she immediately knew something was wrong. She could tell, because I was sitting in our chair in the bedroom and just sitting there kind of just like staring at the floor. She goes, "What's wrong with you?" And I didn't answer her. I just was still just staring at the floor. And she says, "Matt, what's wrong?" And she asked me 2 or 3 times, "What's wrong?" And then she came over and she sat in my lap and she said, "What's wrong, honey?" And I just began to weep. I mean, like I haven't wept since I was a kid kind of weep. I mean, it was the whole slobber knocking, losing my breath, I was just I wept
Yeah.
hard. And she's like, she grabbed my face. She goes, "Honey, what's wrong?" And I said to her, "The cancer spread." And then she immediately hugged me and began to just weep with me. And she was crying with me. She goes, "What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Honey, I have no idea. I have no idea." And so that day was really somber day.
Mm.
Of course, later that morning, we called the doctor's office. I said, "Listen, I need what does this report mean?" And she said, "Okay, listen, I'll talk to the doctor, schedule an appointment, come in later today." So they made room for me that day. And so we went in later that day and sat down with my urologist still, and he's like, "Yep, you're gonna need an oncologist. You know, we were hoping just to take care of this with this and a few medications, but it does look like this is spreading." So he got me on some um, what's called ADT, androgen deprivation therapy,
Right.
right away. He gave me just a sample that he had in his office. "I want you to start this right away, and then fill this prescription. You're going to need to be on this because prostate cancer feeds on
So,
testosterone.
yeah.
Testosterone is the fuel that causes this to grow, which is, in hindsight, much more significant than I realized. I mean, men talk about testosterone, and being macho, and there's commercials on television about what to do if you have low testosterone and take this and take that. And testosterone turns out is more than just, the male sex hormone, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a master hormone in the man's body that regulates so many other
Hormones.
hormones.
Yeah.
So it is a big deal. Okay. It's not just, oh, men and their testosterone. Women and some men will glibly say, "Oh, you have too much testosterone. You don't need, whatever."
Yeah.
And that's really an unwise thing to say, because testosterone does much more than just make a man horny,
Yeah.
so to
Yeah.
speak. And so, anyways, we had to cut that off right away. So I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And again, not realizing the full ramifications of what was about to happen.
Mhm.
And so we did that, and we meet with oncologists and all the stuff. And then all of a sudden this journey started that we're still in, by the way. I actually have 7 more months left of the ADT therapy
Therapy.
and
Yeah.
treatment. I go in every 3 months for an infusion, still and things like that. So I'm still in this. Like I said, I'll be done in July of 26. And so this is still, a battle we're fighting, but those first 18 months or so, 17 months was a total what's going on. And you talked about, asking the why. I mean, I got fatigued and tired of asking why, why, how come? And then you go through all of these things, and of course you blame God, and then you are sorry for blaming
Mhm.
God. And the 5 stages of grief that everybody talks about: denial and bargaining and anger and all those things. I did them all, and in all different orders multiple times.
Let me
you know
just on that. Let me pinpoint on something because you you explain what you went through beautifully, and thanks for sharing, Matt. Really, thanks for sharing in detail. Was there a point where hope seems lost? And if so, how did you respond?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me personally, I don't recall ever a time when I think I totally lost hope. I had always had in the back of my mind, held on to the idea that either God would heal
Mhm.
me miraculously, or that everything was going to be okay. And the reason for that is because of something else that I learned years ago, was this idea of God using everything for my good. Now, that I had thought about that for years, because the reason I say that is because several years before that, my brother tragically and his wife lost their daughter
Oh,
at the age of 10. She was 10 years old, their firstborn. And then even before that, a little bit, my father had passed away at the age of 46. And so we were very young and all that then. So I had already experienced some significant trauma and learned through those experiences that, listen, I don't know the whys and wherefores. That's above my pay
mm,
grade. But what I do know is that God can use this for good. And something, even though I was in the pits of despair. So I don't want to romanticize it. I'm not saying, oh, I always had hope and I was going to be tough and all that. I was in the pits of despair for sure. But I can honestly tell you, I don't think I ever lost the hope that somehow, some way, everything was going to be okay down the road. Now, I didn't know how or when. And I'm still asking that because I'm still over 2 years into this, and I still have more treatment to go. And there's still a lot of side effects. I'm still dealing with incontinence, things like that. The sexual function has not returned to normal yet, stuff like. So there's still like, God, come on, what's going on here? I mean, we're doing everything right as far
When
as
you
we
say
understand.
what's going on, uh, let me go back to why, to that question that we keep wrestling with quite often, nonstop. And on why, did you ask, why me?
I did. I absolutely did. Why me? What did I? More so, I said, what did I do to
To
deserve
deserve this,
this?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did I do to deserve this? And I remember, again, going back to my anchor and hope is in the biblical scriptures. And I remember a story where the disciples came to Jesus about a blind man. And he said, they asked him, they said, Lord, why was this man born blind? Who sinned, him or his father? And Jesus said, neither one of them. He's blind so that I can show my glory, and so that became real to me. It's like, because I'm asking, what did I do to deserve this? And maybe the answer is nothing, Matt, nothing. You didn't do anything to deserve this, but I'm going to use this so that you can testify of my goodness, whatever. And so that was always there. Somehow I believe that Lord was going to use this for good in some way. So that was always there. But I don't want to, again, I want to be very careful not to let your listeners believe that I was like, this is going to be fine, and I'm brushing it off, and I'm in denial about it. I was very, very intentional because anyway, I'm very intentional about telling people, listen, I'm not in denial about what's going on here. I remember teaching a class at the church that I attend, and I was talking about in the Old Testament the story of the fiery furnace. In Sunday school we learn about the fiery furnace and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego getting thrown into the fiery furnace. And right before the king threw them into the furnace, he turned it up 7 times hotter and all the stuff. And he said to the king, he said, listen, our God is able to save us, and we believe he will. But even if he doesn't, we will still trust him. And then of course, Job, the famous line that Job said, even if you slay me, yet will I trust you. And that's where I went. That's the only place I could go. Is okay, even if you slay me, even if you don't, this is the only hope I have, And so I did have that hope in the back of my mind, but that doesn't mean that I wasn't terrified, because I was. And to be quite frank, there's still a part of me that's like, I don't know what's going to happen, and so that's what we did. And but in this book I mentioned, Diagnosed, it only came out just about a month and a half ago, actually. And it's more of a memoir. It's on Amazon, correct? And it's not Diagnosed, and then the subtitle is It's Not Your Battle to Fight Alone. And in the opening introduction to that book, I retell the story from my vantage point of David and Goliath.
Okay.
And one of the things that really helped me was when David was facing his giant, Goliath. And that's what I liken this cancer journey to my giant. And this is a battle I'm going to win. He ran toward the battle is what it says now. And again, the imagery there is incredible, because here you have David, probably a teenage shepherd boy, against a veteran, seasoned warrior, who's not only that, but he's also happens to be a giant on top of that, this kind of stuff. The imagery is amazing. And David, it says, ran toward the battle. And so he's aggressive in his fight towards this thing that's trying to humiliate him, his country, and his God.
Yeah.
And he's good. And that's what I thought. It's like, this thing is trying to humiliate me, because I mean, you think about the side effects of this kind of disease for a man: sexual dysfunction, incontinence. Those are humiliating. And so, he's trying to humiliate me. Everybody who knows me in my community and my work knows that I'm a man of faith. So, they're like, he's trying to humiliate me. He's trying to humiliate your reputation, Lord, kind of a thing. And so I decided I'm going to run toward this battle, and we're going to be aggressive with this. So we did all the treatments, we did all the things, and I'm being as aggressive as I know to be, including the faith side of things. We're praying and we're going to, all the stuff that we need to do. And David also says this when he gets to Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
He says, today I'm going to lift your head from your body, feed it to the animals in the field,
Yeah.
And then he says, but the reason he knew he could do that was because, just like the lion and just like the bear who came after my father's sheep, you will be just like them.
And hang on for our listeners. If you are curious about the story of King David and Goliath, on Amazon Prime, there is, it's quite new, a new series called The House of David, and it's epic. It's wow. I've seen it twice with my boys, and we are looking forward for season 2. So here we go.
I am also. It's a great show. I love it. It's a fantastic show. And so so that's going on. And so, but I had an incredible insight in that, at least for my wife and I said, honey, we need to sit down right now in the next couple weeks and make our list of the lions and bears that we've defeated in our 32 years of marriage, and that we've come. So we did. So we began that journey, and my wife still has it, and she actually has it next to her bedstand, because every once in a while she remembers something else. But we now are on our fourth. We have one of those yellow legal pads, and line by line, we are now on our fourth page of little tiny victories that happened along their way in the journey of our life that we thought were major. I mean, when you're facing a lion or a bear.
When you say yellow pads like this?
Exactly. Yes, exactly like that.
So,
and when you're facing a lion or a bear, that's a pretty big deal, right? I mean, that's not just an easy, little, I'm dealing with a little mouse here in the house. Lion and bear is a different thing. And so those are pretty significant. And when you're in front of that lion or bear, you actually think, oh, this is it. This is the big one. And then later on, when a real giant comes, like, can't you, like, oh, those were just lions and bears. Those were nothing, kind of thing. And that's really what we did. And we took a lot of comfort from that. We took a lot of confidence from that, because we went back and we looked, like, look what's happened in our life. All these different times that we thought we were done. We thought we were through. We thought we were financially ruined, or we thought the kids were going to go off the rails, or whatever it was. Look at these smaller wins along the way. And then we had this list, and we actually lifted and said, listen, just like these lions and bears, this cancer is going to be like that. And that's, I think, has really also helped us switch our perspective, switch our framework a little bit, and again, gave us hope.
Yeah.
And we tell that story, and we to a lot of people, a lot of places now. We have a lot of people in our community who are now keeping lion and bears lists for the big things that they're battling in their lives. And we've been able to get some sponsors for that book Diagnosed that I mentioned. And we've already given away close to 500 copies. And it's been a real blessing. People are, the testimonies and the stories that are coming in from that. I had just the other day, this was only a few weeks ago, a complete and total stranger who I've never seen in my life, recognized me from the cover of the book and all that, and came over to me and in a public, we were in a public park, and just gave me the biggest bear hug. It's like
Oh,
it was awkward,
nice.
but it was also,
Nice.
he goes, "Thank you so much." He goes, "I can't believe how much I also have prostate cancer
Wow.
and didn't know what to do and what to think, and this was incredible." And I've got, any rate, we've got a lot of good stories from it.
Fantastic.
Several of my,
Yeah.
and wives getting it for their husbands, and
Yeah.
and other people. It's not just about prostate cancer. It's about overcoming any major adversity in your life. And of course, the story I'm telling through the whole book is about my prostate cancer
Mm.
journey, but
Yeah. So,
it's really worked for anything.
yeah, no, that's great. Now, let's talk about the EPIC framework, which is excellent perception, inspiration, and compassion.
Yeah.
Emerge from your experience, Matt. How did you arrive at that?
Yeah, so that's also a fun story, but again, something born out of an inconvenience is, so part of the cancer treatment included 40 days of radiation. And I'm thinking, okay, 40 days of radiation. We'll schedule this one here and this one there, and schedule this. I got to work around some dates, and now it doesn't work like that. It's like, no, when we start radiation, it has to be 24-hour increments every day for 40 days.
Wow.
So it's not like we can schedule 5 o'clock on Tuesday and
And
7 o'clock on Wednesday or anything like that. It's like, no, you pick your time and you're here every day at that exact same time, and you can't miss a day.
right.
And so I'm like, well, wait, that means like 40 days I just kind of sit in my house and just wait to go to radiation. And they're like, yeah, that's exactly what that means. And that's just, part of what you've got to do. I said, well, I've got, like, at that time I had 3 public speaking um gigs scheduled. It's like, well, I've got to go to Chicago for this event. I've got to go to Nebraska for this event. I've got one in Florida over here. So you're gonna have to cancel those events, sir. We're sorry. I'm like, well, whoa, 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 whoa. I mean, I thought this was just supposed to be, I was like, nope, sorry, this is serious, sir. And I'm like, okay. So that really bummed me out. I had to cancel these 3 events, one of which I was really stoked for because it was a keynote event for the National Football League at the NFL. I was really excited about that, and I had to cancel that. And so I'm bummed. Not only am I going through the radiation, but I'm bummed. And then I find out, the radiation, after the first, they told me this. They're like, and it was exactly true, by the way. They're like, the first 10 days or so, you're going to feel like nothing happened. It's like, what were they even doing? It's up. But after about 10 days, because radiation is an accumulative effect, which is why you've got to do it every day. It stacks on each other. And she goes, somewhere around day 10 to 12, you're going to start feeling the effects of the radiation, and it's just going to make you totally fatigued, totally tired, this kind of thing. And I'm like, okay. And not really thinking about it because I'm like, hey, I'm healthy, I'm in shape, kind of thing. And boy, were they right. It's like the first literally like the first 7 to 8 days, I'm like, honey, I don't even think they're doing anything. I mean, I feel fine. But then literally about 2 weeks into it,
And then you
I'm
start
like,
feeling the,
okay,
yeah.
yeah, I can really feel it now. And but at any rate, 40 days, I'm landlocked in my home. And I can't just, I'm not a type of guy who can just sit and watch TV for 40 days. Some guys might love that. That might be their dream thing, and just, sit in the lazy boy and watch TV. I can't do that. So I made a commitment to myself. And it was just a personal commitment. I didn't announce it to the world or anything. I just made a personal commitment to myself that I was going to at least take advantage of the time of being home. And I was going to write 1,000 words every day for 40 days. And so that's what I did. Now, my intention at the beginning was to be like, chronicle my cancer journey, my feelings, my emotions, kind of use it as a memoir, so to speak. And so that's what I thought I was going to be doing. Day 3 of that
So,
writing challenge.
Matt, you took that decision and you didn't spread the word. So you kept it for yourself just to kill time or to find something different to keep you busy, basically.
To keep me busy and to keep me thinking, to
Right.
keep me active. Yeah. And because I didn't want to just veg out, So it's just to keep me engaged and I tend to write too as a catharsis.
Mhm.
It helps me realize what I'm thinking. I don't know what I think until
Mhm.
I can write it out, so to speak. And so that's what I started doing. What was funny or interesting is day 3, I was doing my feeling my emotions, and actually part of those first 3 days made it into the diagnose book that we were just talking
Mhm.
about. But day 3 of that writing challenge, I remembered that earlier that summer I had just finished an 8K race, and and I had a picture of myself finishing the race with a big thumbs up. And I remember I was wearing a T-shirt that I had made called that just said "Live Epic." It just said "Live Epic." And the reason, as a little backstory there, is the reason I did that is because I had developed a lecture for my doctoral students, a module for my doctoral students on being epic. And after you graduate and you have your doctoral degree, it's kind of a motivational thing I did at their last residency before graduation. And I'll go graduate and I'll go be epic, kind of a thing. And so that turned into this little thing just within our little cohort of that. So I had a T-shirt that had that on there, and I was trying to find that picture of me finishing the race, because I had just, when I was writing those first 3 days, I had just put together that, wait a second, when I finished that race, it was only a few weeks later that I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, which meant I finished that race. I did really well in that race, and I had cancer in my body that was already spreading, and I didn't even know it. And I wanted to see that picture because I wanted to see the look on my face. And so that's exactly what I did. I found that picture, and I'm looking at it, and a whole nother thing of emotions opened up for me, because I'm looking at this picture now, and I looked at my face. My face was happy. I mean, I just finished a race. I did really well. I was training for a triathlon. Um, I was even still wearing the cast on my hand from when I broke my thumb from that bike
Mhm.
accident that I told
Mhm.
you about before. And so I'm just looking at that picture, and I'm thinking, I had, look how happy I was. I remember the feeling of finishing that race, feeling strong. I felt strong. And I had cancer in my body then and didn't even know it. And I said, well, now that I know it, does that change how I feel? Because I still feel, I mean, other than the side effects of the medications and the radiation, I didn't still have any cancer, weakness
Yeah.
in my body,
Yeah.
really. And so I'm like, wait a second, this is about mindset. And I looked at the picture, and I happened to be wearing that Live Epic
Mhm.
t-shirt that I told you
Yeah.
about. And that moment, that day, something just triggered in my mind. It's like, okay, I'm going to, for the next 37 days, I'm going to stop writing about my feelings and my emotions, and I'm going to put on paper what I think it means to live an epic life.
Right.
So that's what
That
I did. So every day for 37 days, I wrote 1,000 words about being excellent, being perceptive, being inspired, and being compassionate, which I believe are the 4 maxims of an epic life or epic leadership. And so I did that. I finished the 40 days. And believe me, the last few days was the hardest, just because of the fatigue. It was hard to get out of bed eventually, because the radiation and tired. And then just walking up and down the stairs would just completely, wind me. I need a 10-minute break just from walking up and down the stairs. And so I finished it though. And I went to my wife. I said, honey, I think I wrote a book that I think the world needs to hear or read, and she's like, okay, I'm always this, I'm a high visionary, really, everything I do is going to change the world, so she's like, rolls her eyes and like, okay, honey, whatever. And no, I said, honey, I think this is really good, and you read some of it. And of course she read some of it. She goes, yeah, this is
yeah.
pretty good. Let's see what can happen with this. So I reached out to some publishers and pulled a few strings and made some connections, and the rest is history. So on December 9th of 2025,
Mm-hmm.
Becoming Epic is the launch date being released. You can pre-buy your advanced copy now on Amazon. You can just Google it. You go to my website, MatthewKutz.com. You can pre-order it there, but it launches on December 9th, and the title is Becoming Epic.
And we're going to put all that information on the show notes. Matt,
Let me throw one thing
go
out
ahead.
real quick too. If anybody's interested in reading the first chapter is available. It's out there. All you have to do is, and this is for US phones only work in the US. But if just text the word epic, EPIC, text the word epic to the number 55444. And it will send you immediately a downloadable PDF of chapter
5544 or 55444?
55444. 55444.
Perfect. Great. You started talking about the writing process. Was it part of your healing?
Absolutely, it was. Absolutely. For me, it certainly was. Out of that experience, 2 books came. Becoming Epic and Diagnosed. It's Not Your Battle to Fight Alone. And that was incredibly healing for me, just because I could get out what was in me. And not everybody gets the opportunity to speak in front of crowds and go to groups and things like that. And for me, that was it. In fact, believe it or not, my oncologist actually sponsored the publication of Diagnosed. And he has a case in his office, and he gives them away to his patients every day. And he's like, Matt, he actually apologized to me later on, because he was like, listen, I hope you don't mind. I have never seen anyone handle the diagnosis that you have, because you don't, so let me just put this in perspective for you. The type of diagnosis that I have is, while not uncommon, is uncommon for my age. A lot of men have metastatic prostate cancer, but they don't get it until their late 70s, 80s kind of thing. So there's no research that shows anybody living greater than 5 years after the diagnosis that I have. So I found that out because I have a PhD and I teach research methods. So I know how to read journals and find academic medicine. And so I began to research my own diagnosis, and I began to realize, oh my gosh, there's not much. The average life expectancy after this diagnosis is only 5 years. And I'm already 2 years into it now. So, so I'm like, oh, holy smokes. And then I had a light bulb moment, and I confirmed this with 4 different oncologists. But I'm just like, okay, just so I'm clear here, I'm seeing that the age group here is older, 70s, 80s. So are they actually dying from prostate cancer, or are they just dying from something else, because they're that age? And they're like, yes, they're actually not dying from the prostate cancer. It's just there's no studies that go beyond 5 years because they're dying of something else. Mm-hmm. So that's a little caveat in the research that the average person wouldn't know to read. So I'm like, okay, I can understand now that this doesn't mean that I have 5 years. It just means I have an advanced case younger, so I need to be more aggressive.
Right.
And so we learned that. And so we're going through this. But anyways, my doctor was saying that I haven't seen people respond like this. The team you have, because my wife has been at every appointment with me all the way through, very engaged, very supportive. And he actually started giving my phone number out to his other patients, because he didn't get a chance to tell me yet. He goes, I was going to tell you, I didn't think they'd actually call you right away. He goes, because I'm sitting in my home one day and my phone just rings a strange number. He goes, hi, I'm Brad. I'm Dr. Kazanik's patient, and he gave me your number to talk about, how to wrestle with and how to have a good attitude about this prostate cancer. You have a few minutes. I'm like, well, of course I do. But then I'm like, I had a doctor's appointment just a few days after that. He goes, hey, by the way, I gave your number out to a couple
Yeah.
patients of mine. I said, yeah, one called me already. He's like, he did? Oh, I didn't know he'd call you that fast, But so we're working together now. So we started him and I and my wife, we started a prostate cancer foundation
Mhm.
that we call Battle for the
Yeah,
Bulge.
that was my
And kind of a
next
little,
question.
yeah,
But
yep,
go ahead.
yep. Yeah. So a little play on words there.
Yeah.
We think it's kind of tongue in cheek, funny, and it does get the
How did you
attention.
come
It's
up
what
with
we
the
wanted.
name?
My wife's friend. So we're sitting in my
Yeah.
backyard, roasting marshmallows around the fireplace one night, and thinking about, because when we were lamenting the fact, my wife and I were lamenting the fact that there's not a lot of really good prostate cancer support groups, in our local community and whatever. And we're like, we were comparing it to breast cancer. And what's interesting is the frequency of prostate cancer is the same as the frequency of breast cancer.
But breast cancer, it's common. Everyone talk about it.
Right. That's
Yeah.
what I mean. Everybody talks
Yeah.
about breast
breast
cancer,
can-
but no one talks about
Absolutely.
prostate cancer. And so when we were talking about it, she goes, yeah, breast cancer has the cool slogan, save the tatas and these little things that they do to PR and market it. And she goes, we need something cute like that, like Battle for the Bulge. And she just threw that out there. And we all looked at each other and we're like, no, that's perfect. That's perfect. So I bought the domain name the next morning, battleforthebulge.com. And we launched it. We talked to my physicians about it, and they got on board and they helped sponsor it. And so we use that to disseminate the books, and we also use it to raise awareness. So Battle for the Bulge, now we host an annual event,
And it's a
in our
5K
community here.
event.
Yeah, it's a road race. We do a 5K road race and or fun run walk because some people can't
Right.
run. So it's a walk as well. And we have a local band come out, and we have a lot of local charities donate. And so we do the 5K, and then we have a picnic. We grill hot dogs and listen to music and share stories about my surviving breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer, whatever it is. And we give the books away. My doctor always comes and gives a little educational talk. Just here's what you need to screen. Here's how to get awareness. Here's resources if you need them, if you have any questions or concerns, which is great because doctors don't always do that.
Did you manage
And
to get some
I'm
media
very
involved?
blessed.
Sorry, Matt.
Pardon?
Did you manage to get some media involved just to boost awareness?
We did. We
Right.
did. Last year, the local news station came out. They filmed it. They did another newspaper, did an interview with me. And so, yeah, it's growing. So the first year we had 80 people. The second year we had 120. And now we're planning our third year. We always do it in September because September is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month.
Right. Yeah.
So we do that. And so that's been kind of a thing to help us also take our mind off of it and give back some good and things like that. It's important to tell you too, my oncologist is a prostate cancer survivor himself.
Wow.
And so, which is incredibly helpful and beneficial. And so that's important. So I think that's part of, his support for this, as well.
And through the event, Matt, have you seen visible changes in participants' face week by week?
Absolutely, 100%. And
because it's
and
something
the
we
amount
don't want
of,
to talk about it. We're ashamed to talk about it.
well, that's a good point. So let me tell you this. So part of what we do in that Battle for the Bulge is we raise money for prostate cancer awareness and education, but also research. And we were able, and I had not a lot, but I had a few $1,000s that we raised that I was going to donate to a local cancer research center here. So I'm meeting with a team of about 5 or 6 physicians to give them this money. And we're having the same conversation that we're just talking about. And he said that one of the doctors, the director of the research lab, was like, I don't know why we can't get men to talk about prostate cancer like women talk about their breast cancer. He goes, we've got millions of dollars for breast cancer research,
Yeah.
and women are telling their stories everywhere, and it's all over. But we can't get men to do that. They won't volunteer for the studies, stuff like that. And I looked at him like he had four heads. I'm like, are you kidding? Have you ever worked with a person who has prostate? I know exactly why men don't talk about it, because they're ashamed. He looked at me. He's like, what? I'm like, no, I'm serious. Men feel shame when they have prostate cancer, because
Yeah.
think about what that means. When you admit you have prostate cancer, you're essentially telling the world, I'm incontinent. I still, pee down my legs sometimes,
Mhm.
and I have erectile dysfunction.
And
Men,
the irony, in our business, the sports business, in sports culture, men often, I, I will say the majority, are silent about pain and injury.
absolutely.
You got an injury, it's okay, don't worry about it. I continue training or competing and stuff like that. So, and then boom, it's, yeah,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my entire career has been in the sports medicine space, and that's a sign of toughness. It's a sign of I'm not weak. And so
yeah,
just in general, men don't like to talk about what ails them anyways. But then you bring in something as intimate and as personal as my sexual function and my continence. You're darn right. I'm not going to tell
yeah,
anybody about this. It's
it
humiliating.
is.
It's
It is.
emasculating. I'm not going to tell anybody about this. And I said this to this doctor, and you could literally see the light bulb pop,
Mhm.
in his mind. It's like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's why men don't talk
Mhm.
about it.
The
So
same
what they
is the
decide,
same. There is this stigma about we don't want to talk about mental health, or let's say, look, we cannot perform every day 100%. There is ups and downs, but then there is moments where, I mean, maybe the root cause it's burnout, or usually burnout is the main cause, but we don't want to talk about it. And then when you ask why, the answer you get, and you say, the common answer is, I don't want to people think I'm crazy. What?
yeah.
It's
Yeah, there's a big connection between that and concussions. I mean, in sports care, we have a real problem with getting men to report to their athletic trainers
mm,
and physicians and things about concussion symptoms. And I don't know this. This is my personal speculation
mhm,
of, educated guess, but I think there's a connection between that and mental health the same way. It's the reason why men don't report mental health issues, is because they don't want people thinking there's something
wrong with,
wrong
yeah.
with the way they think, that their head, they feel it's a sign of
No,
weakness,
you're right.
because it's
You
an
you
because it's an injury you can't see.
yeah.
No one has a problem with, look, I broke my arm. That's a badge of honor. Look at this.
Or I
I
have
broke my
bruises
arm and
everywhere.
my bones are broken in half, and I'm still going to work,
Yeah,
kind of a
yeah,
thing. And that's a badge of honor because you can see
yeah.
it. But mental issues, concussions, mental health, sexual dysfunction, you
You
can't
can see it.
see it. So I'm not talking about it because I'm ashamed. And I think that's a real issue. Why it's not out there. That's exactly what men have told me in these last 2 years as we do these events, as I distribute the book. They're like, thank you so much for being willing to talk about this, because I don't know anybody else who even does or has. And I feel like it's funny because I've had total strangers tell me, I feel like we're friends, kind of a thing.
Which is
And
nice.
it's
It
very
is
nice.
nice.
And I appreciate that. My wife appreciates that. And she's actually become the huge champion for this. She actually manages the event,
Mhm.
organizes the event. She's given away way more books than I've given away. She carries them in the trunk of her car and
Bless
gives
her.
them out to everybody. And they've been a real blessing for people. And I'm just glad to be a part of that. And my hope is, now to say this, the Diagnose book, it is on Amazon, but primarily we just worked with my physicians,
Mhm.
and we got some sponsors as well. I did a GoFundMe, and which is way over now, but we raised, I don't know, I want to say pretty close to
Mhm.
$20,000 to, for prostate cancer awareness, for distribution of this book, for other education materials,
Mhm.
etc. So right now we're giving the book away as much as we can. and you can get it on Amazon. It's not expensive, but it's a self-published thing. We did it here locally, and we had some help with that and stuff like that. But this next book coming out, Becoming Epic,
Mhm.
is also has my cancer story in it, but to a lesser degree. It's kind of the background, and the main point of the Becoming Epic book is just to learn those 4 maxims in every aspect of your life. So I'm hoping that that's going to have a big impact as well, and I know that it will.
Yeah. So this event, it's an annual event. It's every September. And looking ahead, what's your vision for this movement globally? Do you see it
Yeah,
just locally, or you want to spread it?
I would love for it to spread. So if any of your listeners are at all interested in helping collaborate
Mhm.
with that,
Mhm.
we would love to have local events all over the world, actually, on September, to help us spread the word about prostate cancer awareness and early detection.
Mhm. And again, the website for the event, it's battleforthebulge.com.
Yes, battleforthebulge.com.
Right. Is there a donation page or link?
There's a contact at the
Mhm.
bottom, and you can definitely do that. Reach out to me, and I'm happy to send you books or whatever you might need. If you want to start something, I'm happy to help.
Good. Good. So you've taught mindset for decades, Matt. When the diagnosis came, what mindset shift was required from being the coach leader to being the patient?
It's funny because I talk about this a lot, and the shift is you have to actually practice what you preach. And you almost, that actually
It's
earlier
easy
on.
said
Right, easier said than
than
done,
done. Yeah.
that's for sure. So it adds some legitimacy and some credibility for sure. But it's funny because I talked earlier on about, what did I do to deserve this, or how come, or why is this happening? It actually occurred to me a couple times as maybe why this happened is so that I could put the money where my mouth is, so to speak. Not that I don't believe that's actually what happened, but you do some crazy things in your head, right? And I thought, well, maybe this is happening because I preach so much about, overcoming adversity and having a right mindset. And now I have to do this myself to make it. So the big shift for me was realizing that everything that I had been promoting and coaching is real. It's not just stuff you make up, and it's you actually have to use those techniques and
Mhm.
skills. And so I had to practice what I preached. And fortunately, at least for me so far, and even like I said, my physicians think is working too. And I have 4 different medical specialists. So I have a urologist,
Mhm.
a oncologist, a radiology oncologist, and a therapist, a physical therapist that helps with my pelvic floor therapy. So I'm seeing 4 different professionals. I'm at the doctor almost every week still, and every single one of them, and on a different occasion, has commented to me, I have not seen anybody handle this like you've handled this. And I've not seen anybody have a support of a team as you have. And that being my wife, because like I said, she comes to every appointment, even my physical therapy appointments. I mean, so and she's always there, always asking questions, always this. And so we very much are a team in this. And we've even begun to coach other couples, through this. How can I be a supportive spouse of someone who's going through something like this? And she has some incredible insights herself in that space. But the mindset shift really was one. I had to tell myself I'm not a victim, and I had
Because
to go
that's the
back
thing.
and really.
Listeners, they're going to listen to this episode and they're going to ask, how did he avoid failing into despair or self pity?
Well, I won't say that I didn't. But when I did, it was very short
So,
lived.
okay.
And I think that's important, because I don't think it's possible not to wonder why and ruminate and start to feel sorry for yourself. And boy, I wish this didn't happen to me. That's normal. And you should not feel shame or
About it.
guilt if you feel that way. But I will say this, don't stay there. And I think that's really, really important. And for me, I had to, acknowledge those moments. And there are better days. There are days when I sit there and be like, man, I really feel sorry for myself. Why did this happen to me? And then, you let yourself stay there for a little bit. And then you have to be like, okay, that's enough. I'm done. We have to move on here. And now how that happened for me was, one, my faith is definitely an active ingredient in that. But I also am very intentional about the team of people around me. And I actually created, and I outlined it in my book, Diagnosed, an acronym that's battle. This is what Battle for the Bulge actually stands for. Battle is an acronym. And I used that from when David ran toward the battle in Goliath that we talked about a minute ago. So battle is an acronym that the B stands for be brave. You have to be brave. The A stands for armor up. Put on your armor. You've got to put on your defensive armor as well. So be brave, armor up. The first T is trust your team.
Right.
And for me, that team is my wife, my close community of friends who I share everything with, my doctors, my physicians, and that's my medical team. My rad tech team, my radiology tech team was amazing. You've got to trust your team. Now, I have the benefit, and this is a little bit of a privilege that I have with my background in healthcare and sports medicine. I really, really, really vetted my healthcare team. I didn't just take what was first available to me. In fact, all those 4 different specialties that I mentioned are all 4 in completely different healthcare systems, which means 4 different completely billing cycles and all this and notes. They're all electronic records are all different. So that's a little bit of a thing to navigate, but I'm willing to navigate it because I want to be able to trust my team. Before I picked my oncologist, I went through 4 different opinions. People talk about, we'll get a second opinion. I got 4 opinions. And so I was really diligent in that area. So anyways, be brave, armor up, trust your team. Triumph over fear is the second T. T. Triumph over fear. The L is lean into your faith. And then the final E is engage in life. And that final E, engage in life, for me is where all the value really came. It's like, listen, even if I do have 5 years left, which I don't believe, I believe I have much more than that. I know I do. But even if I do, for those last 5 years, I'm going to engage in life. I'm going to do the things I want to do, be the man and husband I need to be the father I need to be the leader I need to be, enjoy nature as much as I can, enjoy traveling as much. I'm going to engage in life. So I'm going to be brave. I'm going to armor up. Now, armor up for me is protecting my mind. So I think of putting on a helmet, like a football helmet. I think of putting on a helmet, and I'm going to protect what I think, how I think, and what I allow into my mind. Yeah. Because listen, cancer treatment is overwhelming. And I actually write a chapter in my book on Diagnosed on what to do with well-intentioned but bad advice. Because everybody has an opinion on how to treat cancer. You just need ionic water. That's all you need. Just drink more ionic water,
Put it this
ionized
way,
water.
In the social media age, everyone is expert.
Right, exactly. Everyone's an expert.
Whatever question you throw on the table.
Exactly. Everybody's got an opinion about how to treat cancer. And, you need to go to Mexico for this treatment, or you need to go to Argentina for this treatment, or you just need more pure oxygen, or you just need
come to Scandinavia, go to Iceland.
Exactly. You need more cold water
Yeah.
baths and it'll cure cancer. It's like,
Volcano,
whatever.
hot water. Yeah.
So yeah, everybody's got an opinion on how to fix it. So what to, because that could be overwhelming.
Mm.
Am I doing what I need to do? Is it right? Am I not doing, and then you can actually feel guilty about I've not tried everything, kind of a thing. So when I say armor up, I mean put on the armor, put on your helmet, put on your shield, your sword, all that kind of stuff, and just defend yourself against all the negative stuff that's going to come your way, and be ready for it, because it takes people by surprise. It's like, well, I'm just going to do this. And then they talk to someone at the supermarket who's like, oh, doctors don't know what they're doing. Cancer is a medical conspiracy, and they've known how to cure it for years. But because there's so much money being made by pharmaceutical companies, they're not going to allow
Yeah.
this. And,
Yeah.
and, true or not true, I'm not here to argue that. I'm saying there's so much information that can come your way that can just cause you to just curl up in the fetal position and say, this is too much for me. You've got to defend yourself against that. You have to decide what it is you're going to do. Trust your team, right? Decide what it is you're going to do, and then move forward with that treatment in faith. And I don't mean like faith in God, spiritual faith, but faith that you're doing the thing that you believe you need to do. So you move forward with that. And so that's armor up, includes that. But all of those three things: be brave, armor up, trust your team, triumph over fear, lean into your faith, and engage in life, is the battle mantra. And if you do those things, those 6 things, I believe it can help protect you against that despair that comes, that will inevitably come.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thanks for that. And my take, listening to you, between what you went through from the first diagnosis to starting the writing process to putting together an event. So let's say sometimes we ask ourselves, what's the best practice? What's the habits that can help us go through treatment like yours and beyond? So what is clear, and correct me, Matt, if I'm wrong here, what is clear is you need to have the support, the surrounding from the loved one, from the community. And what you did, on the other hand, is to create a new community to boost the awareness with this disease that we shame to talk about openly in public.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And sorry.
No, I was going to say, you mentioned something there that I think is important, because I have talked to people who have said, well, I don't have the team that you have. My wife isn't as supportive, or she actually wants to leave me now, so what do I do? And I don't have a team. And those are real issues and real concerns. And I feel sorry for that. And there's empathy there. But again, you have to realize that you still have a team. It may not be the members that you want them to be, but you have a team. And if you don't have one, create one. And I know they say, well, you did it, but I can't. And I'd say, listen, I don't have any superpowers that someone else doesn't have. I'm just an average person who's trying to make sense of this hand that was dealt to me. And so we all can do these things. If you need help, please reach out. I'm happy to offer my assistance as much as I can, but we need to understand we do have people around us who are willing to support us and help us, even if we don't think we do. And I think that's important. And we can create these events, create these communities for us, even if it's a virtual community. I know of a couple groups that meet online, once a month and things like that for support. So there's options that way as well.
Yeah. You co-wrote Building a Marriage That Is in Focus with Your Wife. How did that experience deepen or challenge your relationship? Especially we're talking about folks reaching out to you, Matt, and I can tell you here in Scandinavia, the percentage of divorce is just crazy. It's up the roof. What gets me crazy, it's when you take the decision to tie the knot and to pledge to each other, to promise to each other, and you're sitting in front of a priest or whoever, you know, and you make that commitment, that promise to support each other, to love each other, you know, in good time, bad time, and what happened to you happens every day.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's you've got to believe. Well, it's a great question. The vow you've taken is a serious vow, you know, so that was something that always resonated with both my wife and I. We did make a promise to each other, and we actually committed to each other that we would never even say or use the word divorce. And in 32 years we haven't. And there has been times where we felt like we wanted to use the word, but we didn't. And just that commitment we made to each other, it's not an option. Too many people enter into that relationship as a contract instead of a covenant. And I believe there's a difference there. The covenant, um, in my mind and in my framework, has a much more significant binding factor than entering into a contract with someone else. Contracts can be broken, contracts can be ended, contracts can be amended, covenants cannot. And so we have that framework going in. But you asked, you know, writing that book with my wife, you know, the challenge of it. And it was a challenge because we both remember everything completely differently. You know, it's like, were we even at the same event? I mean, was it the same thing? It's like, that's not what happened. And she's like, oh no, this is what happened. It's like, what? Are you kidding me? And that book actually, it's actually, people who have read it so far, it's like, it's hilarious because the book is really a bunch of our major mess ups,
Because
you know,
you wrote the book when you were under the stress of your diagnosis, right?
right. We
Yeah.
put it together. Now, yeah, so here's how that went is we put that together then, but it was from, we had done a lot of marriage workshops
Okay.
before
Before
that
that, yeah.
previously for years.
Right.
So we had the material, we had the content, but again, because I was sitting at home doing nothing, we thought we'd start this project and kind of, you know, put it to, we had been wanting to write one for a long
Mm-hmm.
time, just never got to it, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we had the material, but going over our notes and different things, like, remember this? We tell one story in the book. It's people think it is hilarious. It was our second year anniversary. We went on an anniversary trip to a city that we really love. And we didn't know this at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but my wife has a little bit of hypoglycemia,
Okay.
which means when she gets hungry, she gets angry. You know, the phrase
Love
hangry.
it.
Yeah, the phrase hangry, my wife defines hangry, and I'm not outing her. She knows
Yeah.
this about
Yeah.
herself. She admits it. And so we were at this hotel celebrating our anniversary. We decided we wanted to go out for dinner, and so we leave the hotel room and we find that right about 2 blocks away from the hotel is this huge outdoor festival, tents, music, vendors, food trucks, you know, great. Oh, we'll just. So we were on our way out to eat. I didn't know it was as urgent as I realized later that it was. So I thought we would explore first and then eat. And she was simply thinking, no, we're going to eat first and then
Mm.
explore. And so just that subtle little confusion caused this huge argument. and
Oi.
and oh my gosh, to the point where what happened was I was where it was summer because we got married in
Yeah.
August. So I had my car keys, my wallet, my sunglasses in my
Yeah.
pockets, right? So I pulled them out and just nonchalantly, not even thinking about what I was doing, pulled them out and then dropped him in her purse to carry in her
Yeah.
purse. And she looked at me and she's like, well, if you're going to put your stuff in my purse and you're going to carry it, you carry, this is more your stuff than my stuff. You're going to, I said, I'm not carrying your purse. She's like, I'm not carrying my purse. She goes, we need to go get something to eat. And that's blah, blah. We got this huge argument. So she literally takes her purse. We're in a festival with thousands of people, total strangers in a strange city. So she takes her purse. She's like, fine, I'm not carrying it. And she drops it in the middle of the road, in the
Oi.
middle, just watch it, and leaves it there. And she's like, I'm going to get something to eat. And so she walked that way. And I'm like, I'm not picking up your purse.
Oi.
So I walked the opposite way. So we're walking opposite ways with her purse. And now, mind you, in her purse is all of our because my wallet and her wallet, all of our credit cards, all of
Car
our money, our
keys.
car keys, everything, right? Everything is in that purse. And we kept, and what was funny, I bet you people thought that we were like an impromptu stage act or
Yeah,
something, because
yeah.
we were literally, yeah,
And there
she's
was some
walking that
hidden
way, I'm walking
camera
right,
somewhere.
right, and we're turning around and pointing our fingers and yelling at each other. It's like, you know, yeah, we're still yelling. We're getting farther and farther apart. We're yelling louder and louder. So as we're walking apart, people are like watching, eating popcorn, like, this is hilarious. You know, look at this couple.
Showtime.
And exactly. And so we got far enough away where we both realized, okay, if somebody runs away and grabs that purse, we're too far away to catch them
Yeah.
now. So we started walking back, picked up the purse, and she took the stuff out, handed it back to me. I'm not carrying your stuff, you know. So she gave it back. We picked up her purse, and we went and found a place to eat, and we ate and had a great time. I mean, it was, as soon as she got her blood sugar down or up, it was
Yeah.
fine. I mean, we ate, we apologized, made up, that kind of a thing, and had a great evening and a great weekend. But there's full of those types of stories of, and then what we learned from those moments. So that's what that book is about. And what was particularly fun and challenging about that book is, like I said, how funny it is how we each remember what happened completely differently.
Yeah, yeah. Matt, if one of our listeners wanted to improve one part of their marriage this week, put it this way, what's the first step?
You hope you don't laugh, but I'm dead serious.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Have more sex. Have more sex.
Yeah.
I believe that with all of my heart. I don't mean that nonchalantly. We have learned, and we've gone through a bunch of training and things like that. I'm not saying sex is the most important part of a marriage, but it is one of the most important parts of a marriage. And we know this firsthand from counseling couples for literally 30 years. Well, I won't say, probably 20 years.
Yeah.
Is it's not a magic cure-all. You even said at the beginning, there's not a silver bullet, you know, there's not a magic thing you can do. But I know this, couples who are willing to be vulnerable and with each other have a better chance of surviving. And vulnerability, yes, it includes sexual intimacy, of course, but also more than that. Because I know men are like, yes, thank God you said that. Have more sex. Okay. All right. So for the men in there, for women's perspective of sex, it's not just the physical act of coitus, you know, just not having sex like that. There's also needs to be vulnerable intimacy involved with it. So hopefully the women are saying, yes, that's what we need. That's what we want. And so for me, sex is both of those things. It's an exchange of intimacy, the way that each partner likes to receive intimacy. Men treat it's a very intimate thing for a man to have sex, and they think it's special, and it is special. And women like all the other stuff. I mean, they like sex too, but they like all the other stuff, the foreplay. We just read a book last night. We were reading it, funny, and we were reading a story of a couple that called it in their own little fun way. They call it chore play. He goes, we know we're going to have sex that night when we both start doing the house chores together, because that's how I get my wife excited. If she sees me pick up the vacuum or pick up the towel and start drying the dishes or whatever, she knows I want to have sex tonight. So she calls it, we're not having foreplay, we're having chore play. and I thought that was cute because, you know, it's a signal. And this is what men don't do well.
Yeah.
And that's have a signal for, I would like to have sex tonight if we can pull it off, you know, so to speak. And because men just walk in and say, hey, start taking off their clothes, you know, whatever, take your clothes off, and that only works in the movies.
Yeah.
It doesn't work in real life. And but no, I mean that serious. I know it's a little tongue in cheek. I know it's a little funny, but I mean that seriously. And intimacy and vulnerability, I think, are the quickest way to strengthen and or recover a marriage. And again, it's not only sexual intimacy, it includes emotional intimacy. And one of the things my wife and I learned early on, and this was groundbreaking for us, is this idea of intimacy and how it looks. If you think about a general typical couple, so this isn't everybody, but generally speaking, women prefer to have sex in the bedroom with the door closed, under the covers, curtains closed,
No
lights
lights.
off.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Lights off, and men want the exact opposite.
Yeah.
They want the doors open. They want the lights. I want to see what I'm doing here. They want the lights on and all these kinds of things. But women feel they need to be secure. They need to, and
Which
they
is normal.
expect that. And men, right. And men naturally accommodate that. What we learned is, okay, so how a woman feels when a man wants to have sex outside the covers with the lights on is exactly how a man feels when a wife asks her husband the question, what are you thinking about? And so it really helped my wife tremendously, because she was one of those people under the covers, lights off, kind of a thing. And she heard that from another counselor that we were talking to. And I said, honey, he's right. I said, when you ask me about my emotions and what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking, I feel just like you feel when I want to turn the lights on and rip the covers off. I'm exposed. I don't want people to know and feel. And she immediately understood that language. And she now knows that when she asks me how I'm feeling, what are you thinking about, etc., she knows that she's asking me to go outside of my comfort zone and expose myself in a way that makes her feel like, I'm just talking about under the cover, outside the covers with the lights on kind of a thing, is how it makes me feel. And that little bit of information helped us tremendously, because now she's much more sensitive. She's not just casual with how you feeling today or what's on your mind kind of a thing. She knows, it's not just something we can dance around while we're doing dishes or eating dinner kind of a thing. It's no, this is a very intimate time for Matt now. I'm asking him to be vulnerable and expose himself. And if he wants me to do that in the bedroom, I demand certain things, for that to happen. There's got to be trust. There's got to be security. There's got to be all those other things. And it's the same for him when I ask him that. So he's got to know I am not going to talk about this with my friends. I mean, think about what a woman thinks about. You're not going to tell your buddies what we did, are you? Of course not. This is just between us. I don't talk about what we do to my friends or anything like that. Same thing with our conversations. I hope you're not telling your girlfriends, what we're talking about and what I'm thinking. These are my secret thoughts and feelings that I'm only letting you have.
Yeah.
Just like we wouldn't talk about sex or publicize that. I don't want you to talk about this or publicize this to anybody else. This is just for us also. That's really helped us.
Yeah. Really interesting. And I will add to that, since we're talking about marriage and the relationship between the couple. Quite often I get asked that question. My wife and I, we've been married now for 22 years. There is ups and downs, and then when we are with our friends, they're all divorced, which is common here in Scandinavia and in Europe. And one simple answer to that question: how do we manage? And the answer is very simple. We talk a lot, we communicate, and we fight. We have to fight for our relationship to last. It's as simple as that. It's easy to pull the plug.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Right.
And when you have kids, it becomes much more complicated, because you have to look at them. Because if you're selfish, you think about yourself as husband and wife, and you completely put the little ones or the kids as the second layer, not the main one or the most important one. They suffer more.
Right.
You have to fight for it. Life is a fight. Life is a constant experiment.
Yeah.
No, thanks for
100%. One of the things that my dad always told us kids when we were growing up, and at the time I totally understand it now, and I didn't so much then, but he would say this. He goes, listen, boy, I was always in trouble when he said it, because I was getting an attitude or something. But he would say, listen, son, me and your mom, we were a thing
Mhm.
before you were a thing, and we're going to be a thing after you're gone. So just so you know, if it ever comes down to me having to choose between you or your mother, I'm going to pick your mother every time. You know, and that meant a lot. It meant a lot to me because the security and the choices and the stuff that they made were critical because and I realized he's true. So like, me and your mom were a thing before you were a thing. And then he would say this. He goes, "You are just a passing phase in our life. You're going to have your own life, your own marriage, and you're going to have the same thing. But we were a thing before you were a thing. My wife is my wife before she's your mom. Her first priority is the first vow she made. She never made a vow to you. She made a vow to me. You know, and same likewise me too. I didn't make a vow to you. I made a vow to your mother. Now you are gonna a passing phase in our life, and he didn't mean that like he's. I mean, my dad. I had a great childhood. Both my parents loved us, supported us. I mean, I couldn't be the man I am today without either one of my parents. But they made the hard choice that you know we're in this thing together. We're going to do what we need to do while you're here. Everything that you need, we're going to make sure you
Right.
have in education, food, shelter, friends, support, all of those things. I had it all. Family vacations. I mean, we had a great childhood. All me and my three other siblings, all of us. But he was very, very clear we were a thing before you were a thing. We're going to be a thing after
After,
you moved
yeah.
out, you know, after you're gone. So you're just this phase in our life that we're going to take care of you and love you. But you need to know me and your mom are become first. And we're going to make sure we do the hard thing, which is take care of our marriage as much as we're going to take care of you. And that meant a lot to me, especially all of us kids now as adults. All of us have good, healthy, happy marriages, all four of us siblings. And I all of us really attribute that to that philosophy that my parents had of we're going to take care of our marriage as the priority here. Don't worry, you're going to be fed, you're going to be sheltered, you're going to be educated, you know, all of those things. But you know, this is the pecking order here, and we knew that, and it was very much brought an incredible amount of security to us kids.
Yeah. Yeah. We can talk about this stuff for days, Matt. Yeah.
Yeah, you could. You're
Let,
just getting cracked.
let
I wanted to, you mentioned Abraham. I was going to talk about Abraham. I got stuff about Abraham.
we're gonna come back to
Um,
that. We're gonna come back to that. We're gonna shift gear now to something really important and really vital to all of us, which is faith. Now, using your experience, using what you went through, how did your diagnosis challenge or deepen your faith?
wow. I would say it definitely deepened my faith. And, you know, I talked about the battle acronym and the L, the fifth part of that, the L was lean into your faith. For me, I had nowhere else to go. You know, I literally felt like the disciples who were looking at Jesus when everybody left him and he said, "Are you going to leave me too?"
Mhm.
And then Peter said, "Where else can we go? Only you have the words of life." You know, and for me, that was my attitude and still is my attitude. Where else can I go? You know, so I'm going to double down on this faith thing. You know, it's like I might be a fool. Okay, then I'm a fool. But I'm going to be a fool going into and leaning into things that I believe. I'm not going to compromise. This is a great opportunity to compromise, by the way, and nobody would blame me.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we understand. I mean, look what happened to him, and I would be asking the same questions, and I certainly have that opportunity. But for me, that's really not an option. The faith aspect really grew rich for me.
Right.
And I really had to dig in and understand, okay, this is what I've said I believed my whole life. Either I do or I don't. And now the rubber really meets the road because up until now, yeah, we've had some smaller incidences, some lion and bear incidences, but this one is, at least for us, I can't imagine anything bigger. There might be something
Hmm.
bigger. I don't know. But at least for now, we've got this thing in front of us that we're fighting. And it's like, where else can we go? I mean, there's no other option for us. So leaning into our faith is an absolute essential, and getting into pursuing, the God of the Bible, and that's who I mean when I say faith. For me, I mean the God of the Bible, and leaning into that, and understanding that I have to put my faith and trust in something. So it's going to be this, and I go back to what I said earlier about Job. Job, though you slay me, even if you slay me, yet will I trust you. And that's where I found myself being in this situation.
Because in times of, I mean, what you went through, and still it's much more deep and much more complex, but we all have this moment, time of spiritual desolation, and
Yeah,
quite often, personally, I use the rule 5 of Saint Ignatius, which is in time of desolation, never make a change. And
right.
sometimes it's hard. We get caught up with all the nonsense of whatever life threw at us, and we try to follow the routine and things like that. But then when you get a phone call like you did from the nurse, and she told you, Matt, there is something that we need to discuss, we need to review, and then she asks you the question, what's the figures you have, what's the number, she
Yep.
went, she put you on hold, and she went to speak to the doctor, and she said, we want to see you today, right now, and then it cascade from there. It's a
Yeah.
non-stop. And then I ask myself, in your situation, when it comes to, do you feel spiritually abundant, or is the opposite, or what happened to you, it's rather deepen your trust, your faith, your belief?
Yeah. That's such a great question. But I'm going to answer that with, it's both. It really was both, and it vacillated, and this is the tension, I think, in our faith, and the tension in our belief system is this back and forth, because there were definite moments when I felt supernatural peace, the peace that passes understanding, how Paul describes it in the New Testament. There were moments where I felt like everything's going to be fine. And then later that same day, there would be moments when I'm like, okay, this is not good. This is not good. What's going to happen? And you let that fear starts to build up. That fear of the unknown starts to happen. How long do I have? When is this going to happen? Is this other shoe going to fall? Am I going to get more bad news? What else? And I still feel. I mean, I'm getting close to the end now. So what happens in 7 months when I finish my medications and my therapies is we cold turkey stop. So we're going to cold turkey stop, and then we're going to still do the assessments. And if everything stays like it is now, undetectable, then we're good. But if it doesn't and it comes back up, then what? And that's where I'm at now. It's like in 7 months, I'm starting to fear 7 months down the road. Okay, what's going to happen if I get my next test and the PSA is risen some? I'm like, what are we going to do then? Then we got to do another experimental treatments, and we got a whole nother thing we got to do. What am I going to? So I can worry about that, or I can lean into my faith, engage in life. And I would say it's still both and.
Yeah.
I can't tell you honestly that all the bad stuff is behind me and I only have hope and I'm only looking forward to the future and all that. Which I am. I have an incredible amount of hope. I have an incredible amount of positive energy and faith that, things are going to go well. But I also have moments of those desolate spaces. I just finished reading just a month or two ago, St. John's of the Cross's Dark Night of the Soul,
Mhm.
and you go through these moments where you do have these dark nights of the soul. And one of the things that he says, one of the things that I believe is these dark nights of the soul are moments of purification, where your spirit gets perturbated, gets shaken to where the dust and the rust kind of fall off, and it's these desolate places where sometimes you feel like, okay, I've got to look for more than what's here. And David says that. David says in the Psalms that he prepares a table for us in the presence of our enemies. I love that Psalm because I might be surrounded by enemies, but I also know that the Lord is faithful, and somewhere in this desolate place, somewhere in this place where I'm surrounded by enemies, there's a table prepared for me with sustenance on it that I need to sustain myself through this desolate place. And so that's what I go back to when I find myself in a desolate place, and I do. I actually use it as a trigger to realize, okay, it's time to change my perspective. And I simply, I can't just switch it, because you do, but I've got to put these thoughts away. Paul teaches us also in the New Testament, take your thoughts captive.
Right.
And so that's what I've learned to do. If any spiritual thing that I've learned through this, maybe most of all, it's the art and skill of taking my thoughts captive. And, I would have never said that. This interview has really helped me with that. So thank you for that, because I think that's the answer to the question. The moments of the desolate spaces and all those things have taught me that. That's what it's taught me. Wow. I'm having a little insight here right now myself. And I've learned better. I can't say I'm perfect at it, but I've learned to recognize when my thoughts are going in the direction that they shouldn't be going.
Right.
And now that's become almost a trigger. When I see that, I now know, okay, Matt, don't go down this road much farther. Take this thought captive, bring it into what's interesting, because Paul says, take your thoughts captive and bring them into obedience. And so, which is interesting concept. But so I bring my thoughts into obedience, and the obedience is you have to obey the call and destiny and purpose that I feel I have on my life. Yeah. What you're trying to do is move me away from my calling, my destiny, my purpose by leading me down this trail. You have to obey me. David also did this. I love this. 3 times in the Psalms, David asked the question, he talks to his own soul. He says, "Oh soul, why are you disquieted within me? Hope in God." And it's amazing because David is my hero. He's my champion. And I go to him a lot for advice, because if you read the Psalms, you are reading a man who is in despair. Yeah. I mean, read some of those Psalms. He is in despair. He is being hunted by his enemies. He is being betrayed by his son. All these things are going on. And yet he acknowledges those things. He's not in denial about any of them. He's like, "Oh Lord, you've left me. How long are you going to be silent from me?" That's a desolate place. But he says, "But yet I will trust in the Lord. But even so, I remember your right hand of strength," and things like that. And that's where I get to, is David was able to do that. He recognized when his soul was out of order with his reality. And he said 3 times, "Oh soul, why are you disquieted within me?" In other words, my soul is agitated. It's upset. It's trying to get me. My soul is my mind, my will, my emotions. It's taking me in a direction that I don't need to be going. And he's essentially saying, be still, stop it, and he takes his thoughts captive. And so that's what this journey has taught me more than anything else, how to recognize when my thoughts are getting out of control, leading me into those dangerous places, and I have to stop and redirect my soul in a new direction.
Yeah. Matt, at my parish here in Stockholm, I'm a member of a men's group at our Catholic church, and we meet every week, every Wednesday actually, 5 p.m. And every week we have a different session or different theme. We discuss about that theme, that topic. And last month, the topic was about suffering. How it isn't just something to endure, but something we can intentionally engage with. So we recently reflected on a guide called Into the Breach Suffering, and really reminded me of your story. And if you don't mind, I have just a couple of questions to ask you on this topic, because suffering as a topic keeps coming back in this podcast. And we try to simplify it. And because again, it goes back to wrestling with the question, why me? Why it's
Mhm.
happening to me?
Mhm.
How do you personally respond to suffering? Do you lean towards trust, frustration, or avoidance?
Well, I think the natural human tendency is to avoid it as much as we
Mhm.
can. And I think that's natural, and I don't feel any shame in that. That said, can't avoid suffering. It will find you. It's a master, it will find you in where you're at and what you're doing. So when it finds you, you have to lean into it, and this is so important for me because it's not about seeking the suffering, because there is a line of thought somewhere, especially the old desert fathers and some of the old monastic monks, they used to scourge, and they used to go into the suffering and embrace it. I don't think we should be looking for suffering. I don't think we should romanticize suffering or anything like that. Because it's going to find you. You don't need to go looking for it. It will find you. And when it does, I look at it as a way that's beyond my capacity to understand. So scripture also tells us his ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. And there is a reality to the way of the cross, or the way of Christ, that includes us. I mean, Jesus said he learned obedience. Jesus said this himself in the red letters, that he learned obedience through the things that he suffered, and there is an incredible reality to the doctrine of suffering that I think the church today is afraid of, because we talk so much about prosperity and so much about, and those are all true too, and
Yeah.
I don't want to diminish those at all, but I don't believe you can have credibility with people. If we're to be salt and light in the world, I don't believe you can have credibility with people if you're untrue about your suffering, and the things that we carry, the things that we suffer. And I believe those things are meant for our good. Again, I go back to what Joseph said: you meant this for evil, but I meant this for good. Jesus learned obedience through the things that he suffered, and there's story after story in the Old Testament about that process of the disruption that comes to your life through various things, and how always God uses those disruptions to make you stronger. I am a big fan of the book Anti-Fragile by Nassim Nicholas Taleb.
Hmm.
And
Never heard about.
it's a fantastic book. I highly recommend
What's
you
the
read it.
title again?
Anti-Fragile. And Nassim,
Hmm.
Nassim, Nassim Nicholas Taleb, Taleb, is the author.
T-A-L-E. Taleb.
And his book Anti-Fragility is about going through the disturbances and the pain and the randomness of life and becoming out the other end stronger. And he has a lot of examples, but if we think about the human body, we know that our muscles only get stronger through resistance. And so that we have a natural example. And how many times did Paul use the natural body and marriage as examples of what it's like to live a life of faith? I think it's the same thing here. It's like your muscles, your heart, your physical muscles, talking about sports, won't get stronger. Your heart doesn't get better. Your lungs don't increase in capacity if you don't stress them. You have to stress them, and you have to stress them very strategically, right? You've got to stress them a certain amount, because after a certain amount of time, the same stress ongoing for years is going to cause a plateau. It's going to stop being a benefit. So you have to gradually, it's called overload. Yeah. So I stress it so hard one week, and I have to stress it a little bit more the next week, and then a little bit more the third week. And that's how growth happens.
Right.
And I believe it's the same thing with suffering. We have to look at suffering like we look at physical exercise. I don't want to do it. It's painful. It hurts. I'm going to need recovery. I'm going to be sore. All of these, I'm going to need rest, all of these things. But we also have to believe that somehow, in some way, God is making this cause me to be stronger emotionally, spiritually, physically, all of these things that I think are so that's how I view suffering. I'm not looking for it, but when it comes, I believe God is going to use it.
Yeah. And it's part of the journey.
Part of the journey. So I say all that to say this, and here's another one is this is Designed Disruption by Matthew Kutz. It's not out yet. This is my first draft copy. And as another thing, I just finished it this morning before our call actually finished.
So what's your
the final edit? And the whole book is about suffering. And the importance of suffering. And I call it, the title is again, Designed Disruption, and how God uses disruption in our life. And chapter 4 is Abraham, the whole book of Abram. Our whole story is about Abram.
Fantastic.
And the disruption that God brought to his life and how he grew from it. And then I talk about David, of course. I talk about
when the book will be released.
So that is to be determined. We're still working on. Yeah, we're still working on it. I'm still in the draft phase, but I hope to have it out in the next 6 months or so. But we'll keep you posted on that. You can keep following my website for updates on it. So MatthewKutz.com will have updates on it. But
lovely. That's great.
Yeah, I've been really thinking about that a lot these last probably 6 months. I've been working on this.
Can you show us again the cover?
Yeah. Yes.
Here we go.
Designed Disruption.
Great.
And so that's what we're working on, and overcoming the fear of the unknown, how the unknown, and it talks about how pain and suffering brings clarity. It's clarity and refinement. Embracing the uninvited storms of life is one of the title chapters. I talk about the opening chapter is what I call the divine blueprint for disruption. And that's, I go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, where it says, in the beginning, there was darkness and void, the emptiness, the void. When God created the earth, there was something there. It was empty. It was void. It was dark. And that's how we feel. That's what we feel when we're in that desert, that desolation. I feel empty, devoid, dark. But then God speaks and immediately brings order to that.
It's funny talking about that, because it's one of the main part of that Genesis. It's which stay with me since a long time and still to today. It's the creation, because I always wrestled with the question of why we here. What's the purpose? Who did all that? How did he do it? What kind of power? And when you read the first part of Genesis, and there is one sentence that always is here all the time, and he had a plan of sheer goodness. And then every day, whatever he did, and it was good. How often I try to make a different interpretation, just to answer to those questions. How is that even possible? What kind of power? Why he did it? What's our purpose? And then starting with the Holy Family, Adam and Eve. Why Eve, she went against God's instruction. Don't touch that tree. And she did. And sin started from there. And it's just amazing.
It totally is. It's a divine mystery that has fascinated me for years. And Genesis, you could live a life just on Genesis chapter 1. you know, with the questions that come and all that. And it's a certainly is a divine mystery, and it's so fun to explore.
And the
But
science tried and still to make sense of that. And it's
they
no,
still can't. They still
no
can't.
way.
They still can't. Yeah,
No
they
way.
still can't.
Yeah.
God will not be mocked.
No.
You know,
No.
So
Matt, how would you like your kids, your students or clients to remember you or to remember your work, actually?
it would be important for me for them to remember as a man of sincere faith. You know, it's you know, I would like them to recognize this was a man who did what he believed in. And yeah, I guess that's it. I mean, it's as simple as that and complex as that. But I would like to be remembered and known as a man who did what he believed in.
Right. Now it's time for our lightning round.
Let's do it.
So, ready for speedy Q&A?
Let's do it.
Right. We talked about so many books, you know, and I took notes actually. I have been taking notes nonstop. Favorite book you've read in the last year? Pick one.
Favorite book I read in the last year. I just read and finished reading a book by Daniel Kahneman called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. I think it's a great book. I read it a couple times, but I think it's a great book.
Nice. Best pre-race or pre-performance meal?
Carbohydrates, for me, a bagel.
Oh,
plain bagel.
A plain one or?
Yep, plain one.
Plain, yeah. One habit that changed your life, beside of reading 1,000
Prayer.
words.
Right, yeah. Prayer.
Yeah.
Prayer, for sure. Disciplined prayer.
Yeah. Early morning thinker or a late night doer?
Early morning thinker.
Coffee, tea, or something else?
Tea. I don't drink. I've never had a cup of coffee.
Ooh.
So tea.
I'm a coffee person. No caffeine, I don't function.
Oh no, I love caffeine. I drink a lot of caffeine.
Yeah.
But tea. Yeah, tea. I'm not a big fan of hot drinks. That's what it really is. So my tea is even cold. I drink iced tea.
Yeah. Most underrated recovery tool?
Most underrated recovery tool, the ice bath.
Guilty pleasure TV show?
Oh my gosh. Guilty pleasure TV show. Right now we're watching Only Murders in the Building. And that's,
is it with
Steve Martin and Martin Short? Yeah. Only Murders in the Building.
Yeah. If you could have a dinner with a historical figure, who would it be and why?
Moses.
Why?
Easy for me. Moses, because I would like to know the details of his account on Mount Sinai when he walked into the cloud where God was.
Describe yourself in one word.
Energetic.
Best way to unwind after a long day, or let's say after a tough week?
For me, I have a vice. I'm ashamed to say I like smoking cigars. So for me,
no
it would
shame
be,
about that.
Yeah, good.
No shame about that.
For me, good. For me, it would be sitting on the back porch with a good cigar.
With the cognac or without?
I prefer a little bourbon, maybe.
A little bourbon. And me, it's cognac. Yeah. Matt, thank you so much for sharing your insight. Thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me. This was actually good for me too. I really appreciate it.
And before we close, I want to leave you and our listeners with something from St. Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 5, verses 3 to 5. We boast in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not disappoint. It's a reminder that through suffering, God is shaping us, not breaking us, and that true hope never fails. Thank you for tuning in and supporting PreZero Sports Talk. Your support helps us bring forward authentic voices, real stories, and conversations that go deeper than the game. Season 3 has been a true blessing. Thank you to our guests who brought depth, challenged the status quo, and spoke from the heart. You can watch the full episode on YouTube and Spotify. Subscribe, tap the bell, and share it with someone who values real conversation. Wishing you a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays wherever you are. We're looking ahead to an exciting season 4 in 2026. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and take care.